The studio lights dimmed, and an unusual hush fell over the crowd. Jimmy Fallon's trademark grin slowly disappeared, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. Sitting across from him was Karoline Leavitt, poised, composed, and utterly unfazed. I don't even know how to respond to that," Fallon muttered, glancing off camera toward his producers in search of support. The audience, typically quick to laugh or applaud their beloved host, remained frozen in silence until they suddenly erupted. But the cheers weren't for Fallon. They were for Leavitt. Karoline Leavitt had just delivered a response so sharp, so unexpected, that it would go viral within hours, spreading like wildfire across the internet. What began as a routine late-night interview had exploded into a defining moment, one that would ignite national discussion and challenge the status quo of televised political discourse. Before we unpack this remarkable exchange, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable political moments that mainstream media often ignores. To truly grasp the weight of what happened that night, we need to understand who Karoline Leavitt is and why her Tonight Show appearance sent shockwaves across the country. At only 26 years old, Leavitt had already crafted a political resume most could only dream of. She served as a White House assistant press secretary under President Trump and later became communications director for Representative Elise Stefanik. In 2022, she made headlines as one of the youngest major party congressional nominees in U.S. history, running in New Hampshire's 1st District. Smart, unflinching, and unapologetically conservative, Leavitt represents a new wave of Republican leadership, one that doesn't shy away from tough interviews or hostile media environments. Her appearance on Fallon's show wasn't accidental. It was strategic, and it changed everything. After weeks of increasingly politicized monologues, The Tonight Show took a sharp turn from its traditionally lighthearted tone. Host Jimmy Fallon, once celebrated for steering clear of political partisanship, had noticeably leaned into progressive talking points. His recent segments included frequent jabs at Republican policies, coupled with gentle interviews of left-leaning guests. As ratings began slipping amongst center-right audiences, producers sought to shake things up with a fresh guest, Karoline Leavitt. Few expected just how compelling her appearance would be. Behind the scenes, Leavitt prepared thoroughly. She studied recent episodes, analyzed Fallon's tactics, and readied herself for potential gotcha questions disguised as playful banter. Meanwhile, Fallon's team crafted a segment they internally dubbed Quick Fire, a rapid round of seemingly harmless prompts known to trip up political guests. Several conservative figures had previously faltered during similar bits, resulting in viral clips that dominated social media. As Leavitt took her place on the iconic blue couch, the studio audience greeted her with polite but cautious applause. Fallon opened with his trademark charm, casually referencing her rise in politics. The mood, however, carried a subtle edge. "So, Karoline," Fallon said with a slight smirk, "you worked in the Trump administration. That must have been interesting." The loaded pause drew amused chuckles from the crowd. Leavitt didn't flinch. "It was the honor of my life to serve the American people," she replied confidently. "I'm proud of what we accomplished." Then came the quick-fire game. "Let's play a game," Fallon grinned. "I'll say a topic. You give me your first reaction." Leavitt, sensing the trap, smiled coolly. "Sure. Sounds fun. Climate change. A serious issue," she responded, "but one that demands innovative solutions, not just government mandates." Fallon raised his eyebrows, slightly surprised by her composed answer. He pressed on. "January 6th? A tragic day. I, along with all Americans, condemn political violence in any form." Offstage, a producer nodded with approval. The studio energy shifted as Fallon fired off more charged topics: election integrity, vital to our democracy. Every legal vote must count, and citizens deserve systems they can trust. Each answer was polished, substantive, and notably hard to spin into controversy. Fallon's tone sharpened as he upped the pressure. "Your generation largely votes Democratic. Why do you believe you're on the right side of history?" Leavitt leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but pointed. "I don't assume I'm on the right side of history, Jimmy. That phrase usually shuts down discussion instead of inviting real debate. I stand for individual liberty, limited government, and faith in the American people. Those ideas have created more freedom and prosperity than any system in world history." A quiet ripple moved through the audience. This wasn't the typical late-night routine. Leavitt had not only sidestepped the traps, she had shifted the tone entirely. What began as another political segment ended in an unexpected moment of clarity, one that left both host and viewers rethinking what real dialogue can sound like. What began as a typical late-night segment quickly turned into a masterclass in poise and message control when Karoline Leavitt appeared on The Tonight Show. Host Jimmy Fallon, attempting to regain control of an unexpectedly balanced exchange, tried to inject humor to lighten the tension, but the joke landed flat. Then came the next tactic. Fallon introduced a series of edited video clips from Leavitt's past rallies, spliced for maximum impact. "Would you like to clarify these statements?" he asked, as a selectively edited quote played for the audience. Leavitt didn't hesitate. "I'd be happy to provide the full context that clip left out," she said calmly, then offered a clear, reasoned explanation that cast the soundbite in a much more rational light. Audience members exchanged surprised glances. This wasn't the familiar pattern. There was no flustered backtracking, no viral stumble. Sensing the dynamic shifting, Fallon reached for his signature blue cue card, signaling the start of his Truth or Tweet segment, known for putting political guests on the defensive. "I found this interesting," he said, reading aloud. "In 2022, you said young Americans are struggling because of failed democratic policies. Yet most economists say the causes are broader: pandemic effects, global conflicts, corporate decisions. How do you respond to the experts?" It was a calculated setup, framing opinion as settled fact and placing Leavitt in opposition to vague, unnamed authorities. Her reply, however, was anything but flustered. "First," she began, "I'd challenge the assumption that economists universally agree. Many well-respected voices argue that unchecked government spending has been a major driver of inflation. Second, young Americans don't need economists to explain what they're living through." She leaned in. "When you can't afford rent, groceries, or to start a family, you don't need a think tank to validate your reality. I've met thousands of young people who feel betrayed by leaders who promised prosperity but delivered record-breaking inflation. This isn't about partisanship, it's about lived experience." As she spoke, the usual audience cues, laughter, applause on Fallon's lines, shifted. Instead, there were nods, murmurs of agreement, even some subtle applause. A rare moment of resonance for a conservative guest on a left-leaning show. Fallon attempted to steer the conversation back, cutting in multiple times, but Leavitt respectfully continued, finishing her points with clarity and control. What had started as a staged ambush was now evolving into something Fallon's team hadn't anticipated, a serious, compelling exchange where Leavitt was clearly holding the upper hand. As the segment neared its climax, Fallon made a final pivot, one he believed would subtly diminish her authority. "You know, Karoline," he said with a slight smirk, "you're very articulate for someone so young. But don't you think there's value in experience? People who've lived through more economic cycles tend to develop more progressive views. Isn't it possible that, in 20 years, you'll look back and see things differently?" The audience hushed. The question, polished and seemingly respectful, was loaded. At its core, it questioned her credibility based not on her ideas, but her age. Leavitt didn't flinch. She met Fallon's gaze and, for the first time, paused. 3 long seconds of silence filled the studio. The cameras zoomed in on her expression. Calm, unshaken, ready. What she said next would define the interview and send social media into overdrive. The moment was electric. Viewers could feel something pivotal was about to happen. "Jimmy," Karoline Leavitt began, her voice steady and deliberate, "would you ask that same question to a 26-year-old progressive? Would you suggest that their political views are less valid because of their age?" Fallon blinked but said nothing. Leavitt continued, each word measured. "The notion that wisdom only comes with age, or only from one political direction, is exactly why so many young conservatives are choosing to speak up. I respect people across all ages and ideologies. That respect should go both ways." Leaning in slightly, she delivered what would become the centerpiece of the segment. "My generation is facing skyrocketing housing prices, rising crime, inflation that's eroding our savings, and national debt we didn't create, but will be expected to repay. For us, these aren't policy debates. They're everyday realities. And they're the result of decisions made by leaders who may not live long enough to face the fallout." The studio was dead silent. Leavitt's gaze remained focused, her tone unwavering. "So when you ask whether I'll change my mind with age, I'd offer a different question. What gives anyone the right to mortgage our future? Then tell us we're too young to have a say in shaping it." A brief smile softened the weight of her words, as she added, "I believe in the founding American principle that all are created equal. That includes age. My generation deserves to be heard." not dismissed under the guise of concern. For a second, no one moved. Then a single clap broke the silence, followed by another. And then the entire studio erupted in applause. Viewers at home watched as members of the audience stood, some nodding, others visibly moved, many surprised by their own reaction. Fallon sat stunned, his usual quick humor nowhere to be found. I don't even know how to respond to that, he finally admitted, glancing toward his producers. The applause carried on, forcing the show to cut abruptly to an unscheduled commercial break. As the cameras faded out, viewers caught a glimpse of Fallon gathering himself while Leavitt sat calm and composed, exactly as if she had expected this moment and prepared for it. When the show returned, the energy had clearly shifted. Fallon's tone was different, less defensive, more thoughtful. The final portion of the interview evolved into a genuine dialogue, something rare on modern late-night TV. As the segment wrapped, Fallon extended his hand. "You've given us a lot to think about," he said with uncharacteristic sincerity. "And I think we could all use more conversations like this." Within minutes, clips from the exchange were spreading rapidly across social media, quickly dubbed the Fallon freeze the moment Fallon was visibly silenced by the strength of his guest response. By the next morning, the video had garnered more than 20 million views. Media outlets across the political spectrum were covering it. Conservative channels hailed Leavitt's performance as a masterclass in composure and messaging. Even progressive analysts conceded that her handling of the segment was highly effective. This was a textbook example of how to turn a potentially hostile interview into a defining moment, said one communication strategist on a morning panel. Leavitt stayed composed, neutralized the traps, and offered a powerful message that transcended party lines. Interestingly, The Tonight Show's official social media channels, known for posting multiple clips from each episode, chose not to share the segment at all. But it was too late. Audiences had already recorded it, shared it, and turned it into a cultural flashpoint. Requests for Leavitt to appear on other national programs surged overnight. Whether you agreed with her politics or not, the takeaway was clear. In a moment designed to undermine her, Karoline Leavitt delivered a defining answer and changed the tone of the conversation. The fallout from Karoline Leavitt's headline-making appearance on The Tonight Show didn't end when the applause faded. In the days that followed, a quiet transformation began rippling through media, academic, and political circles alike. Network executives, many of whom had long hesitated to spotlight younger conservative voices, suddenly found themselves reevaluating their guest booking strategies. Behind the scenes, producers and hosts across the late-night landscape reportedly reviewed the Leavitt exchange with their teams, asking a critical question: how can we better engage with diverse viewpoints without relying on condescension or caricature? But the impact wasn't limited to television. University professors in political science and communications departments began incorporating the clip into lectures and media training sessions. One scholar, whose commentary went viral on social media, predicted, "This will be studied for years as a textbook case in message discipline under pressure." For Leavitt personally, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Her social media following surged by over 200,000 in just a single day. Speaking invitations poured in from organizations across the country, some supportive, others ideologically opposed, but all united in their respect for how she held her ground with grace and clarity. Even critics acknowledged her composure and conviction in the face of an intentionally difficult environment. Perhaps the most significant legacy of the moment was the broader conversation it sparked, one that transcended party lines. Opinion columns began circulating with provocative headlines like, "Is ageism the last acceptable prejudice in politics?" and "What young voices bring to national dialogue?" Commentators from across the political spectrum weighed in, agreeing on one core idea: dismissing someone's perspective solely because of their youth or age in general is a practice long overdue for re-examination. In a surprising turn, Fallon himself addressed the viral moment in his monologue the next evening. "Last night, we had a conversation that really got people talking," he admitted. "And honestly, that's a good thing. We need more moments that make us think and question what we assume. I've read your comments, and I hear you." Though not a formal apology, Fallon's acknowledgement stood out in an increasingly polarized media climate. Instead of defensiveness, it showed a rare willingness to reflect. Political analysts quickly noted the deeper cultural shift the moment represented. "This wasn't just a media win," said a veteran strategist. "It marked a generational evolution in conservative communication, less combative, more authentic, and surprisingly effective across traditional ideological lines. A week later, the numbers confirmed the moment's resonance. Polling data showed a measurable uptick in interest in conservative ideas among voters aged 18 to 34 who had seen the segment. While not a sweeping ideological shift, it was enough to grab the attention of strategists from both major parties. This is how real cultural change begins, one commentator noted. Not with shouting matches or viral takedowns, but with principled, thoughtful responses that disarm preconceptions and invite reflection. The Leavitt moment on The Tonight Show now stands as a powerful example of what's possible when authenticity meets preparation. While most political guests brace for ambushes and snark, Leavitt showed that calm confidence and well-articulated values can turn the tables entirely. The lessons extend far beyond politics. The exchange reminded viewers that even in entertainment-focused formats, real conversations are still possible and perhaps even more impactful when unexpected. It challenged media gatekeepers to reconsider how they frame dissenting views, and it highlighted the strength of mutual respect in an era increasingly driven by outrage. Above all, it underscored a simple truth. Behind every political label is a human being with stories, principles, and perspectives worthy of serious consideration. As our political discourse continues to evolve, moments like these serve as vital blueprints for meaningful engagement. What part of the exchange stood out most to you? Do you remember a time when late-night shows welcomed more balanced debate? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that go beyond the headlines.